Well, one of the many reasons why I love you guys is because you just exemplify the principle that we were talking about earlier, is if you don't like something, create the alternative, create the better. And you are like create, not complain people. So talk to me a little bit about that moment where you thought, do you know what? You talk about it in the VT. Actually, we want to create material that we're proud to show our kids.
Yeah, I shared the experience that I had with my 9-year-old when I wanted to teach him the principle of honesty and integrity. And when we discussed together as brothers creating VidAngel, the reason that we started it was because we said, if we create this, we'll gather a group of people and we'll be able to create original stories and distribute those better than Hollywood. And that was the vision that got all of us to come together and to do this. And our driving motivator is we didn't see a path. We saw culture headed in a direction that was so different from what we wanted for our children and for our grandchildren that, and we also, Jeffrey did a survey on how many other families felt this way, and we found about 47% of American families wanted to solve the same problem.
Quite a few British families too, I'd like you to know.
Well, yes, we were too American-centric when we started, but that was the vision, and we didn't see, if we didn't do it, we didn't see anybody else doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. What I find interesting is that in Sabin's story and in your story, you set out on this creative journey, and then almost the first thing that happens is you run into opposition. Like, tell us what that moment was like when you suddenly have like a legal case being thrown at you.
I remember the private investigator coming. We had a hole-in-the-wall office in the middle of Provo, Utah, and the private investigator came in. He had slicked back hair, and he gave us a stack of papers this big. And Disney's name was on the lawsuit, and we were stunned initially by that because we revere that company and those founders. And we went from being very excited about what we were doing to feeling like every investor turned away from us. All of the partners that we were talking to were no longer interested. We were a pariah, and that was a very dark moment.
And Jeff, you obviously had a history of selling potatoes. Did you think that was going to be your next step, or what were you kind of feeling at that moment in time?
Yeah, the last couple of years, Angel's been in the top 10 studios in the United States for box office. And we get these executives showing up in Utah trying to ask us, what are you guys doing? And how in the world are these potato farmers making a studio that's competing? And I think even though potatoes was just the only thing I knew at the time, there's a really good book by Jeff Schwarting called The User Method. And he goes through and explains that out of the unicorn companies that are billion-dollar companies, 3 out of 5 of them are created by founders that are just trying to solve a problem for themselves. So Steve Wozniak just created a computer he wanted.
And we heard that from Pete Richardson today, that, like, what did he say? Something like a problem that needs solving or void that needs filling.
That's right, a void that needs filling, or they're just solving a problem for themselves. And so Steve Wozniak just creates a computer he wants. Then the Airbnb founders, they just blew up air mattresses on their floor to pay their rent because there was a big conference like this right next door. And then they were like, well, we can make a whole business for people blowing up air mattresses on their floors and call it bed and breakfast, Airbnb. And that's how Airbnb started. Or Mark Zuckerberg, he wanted friends. There's
still needs friends.
Yeah, but So we have kids. I've got 6 kids. Jordan has 6 kids. Neil has 10 kids.
So you're doing a bit for the demographics, okay?
Yeah. And
really
I have 3.
clapping for our wives.
yes.
Falling behind.
Yeah, and our goal is to build something that we wanted.
Yeah.
And it turns out that hundreds of millions of other people want the same thing as we did.
And you then were able to mobilize some of those hundreds of millions of people. And Jordan, you created something called the Guild. Now talk us through how the Guild operates.
Yeah, so I mean, the goal of the Guild was...
There's a good slide for this.
Yeah, pull it up. The goal of the Guild was, one of the big issues inside of the entertainment space is that you've got, like Jeff was saying, and you have a small group of people who are making multi-$100 billion decisions around content. And Jeff's thought was, well, if we can figure out how to have the community come in and actually give us a massive amount of data around their experience with a piece of entertainment or a piece of art, they're going to give us the best signal as to whether this has an audience. And so that was kind of the inception of, there's another book called The Wisdom of Crowds, and it dives into this concept of that if you give them the right environment and the right sandbox, the community can actually make better decisions than most any expert. And that's sometimes a very controversial statement, but what we've seen very consistently is that the Guild is picking winners that no one else would ever find or diagnose. So one of the first theatrical releases that we did was called His Only Son. It was this small little $250,000 film. It'd been passed by every studio, and it went into the Angel Guild, our members, and they voted on it, and it popped. It was just like, this is a super compelling story. And so we decided to take this to theaters, and it ended up getting in the top 3 in the box office with Mario Brothers and John Wick in there. It did over $12 million, this $250,000 film. Ended up trending on Amazon Prime in the top 10 for weeks, beating out The Flash and many other bigger films, a $250,000 film. What did the executives miss? What they missed was that there was an extremely compelling story that moved the individuals in a way that only art can. And we try not to have the hubris to think that we can predict as founders and executives what is meaningful to the audience. And so this community is helping guide not only what content we're bringing, but it's doing it off of this North Star of amplifying light.
So we showed at Sound of Freedom at ARC last year, which came out of Angel Studios. And what is your vision? What are your values? What are you actually trying to build?
That's a great question. And if I could go back to what Jordan just described about the Guild and your first question about running into this obstacle with the lawsuit with Disney. The Guild grew out of the pain of that lawsuit.
Yeah.
During that lawsuit, we raised $10 million from 8,000 families in 5 days to help us fight the lawsuit and start Angel Studios.
As someone who raises funds, I know that's tricky to do.
It's a testimony to what we were doing, that people wanted us to keep going. They didn't want us to give up. They didn't want us to lose, and we didn't. And we were able to settle with Disney, but our brother Daniel called Jeffrey and me right after that and said, hey, you just raised $10 million. What if we did the same thing to be able to fund the first shows of Angel? And that's the way we raised money for Dry Bar and for The Chosen and other projects that we've done. And then the Guild and this idea kind of grew out of the fact that we looked at the lawsuit with Disney and said, how did this company become so ugly behind the scenes that they would come attack some farm boys from Idaho that are trying to solve a problem for families? What happened? What's the difference between when Roy and Walt Disney were running this company and today? And Jeffrey, as the chief content officer, really was also thinking about how we solve this problem so that it outlasts the founders. And the Guild grew out of that. But the important thing about the Guild is not just the fact that we have now 900 940,000 people who are voting from 170 countries, but they make a pledge. They pledge to amplify light. When I vote, I pledge to help choose excellent entertainment that is true, honest, noble, just, authentic, lovely, or admirable. So that's the North Star of Angel Studios.
Guys, today we're talking about the builders. Bring out the builders. Bring out those who are actually building culture. I mean, what I so love about everything that is happening here is we're seeing people who are actually building culture. How are you planning to take this next to scale?
Man, the Angel Guild is what's taking this to scale, and that's you guys. You are the community and there's probably some guild members in here. I've actually met a couple of them while I've been at this conference, so thank you.
Hands up if you're a guild member. I know I met one.
Thank you so much. Here we go. You're starting a movement that's creating, and we don't have time to get into it, but we're giving, unlike Netflix and every other streamer, we're giving 50% of those profits back to the producers and their investors so that in the streaming world, there can be a revenue model that's sustainable. Right now in the art space, there is not, and specifically in the streaming space, there is not a sustainable business model for the creators and the artists who are trying to create incredible art. And so this is going to scale because Jeff always says, and he said this in his panel last night, that Harmons live on the other side of the screen. You as guild members, you are living on the other side of the screen. You're not just consuming content like you would in a transactional relationship with the Netflix. You are helping create content, and so your life experiences and your pain is now playing into the art that is on the screen with Angel Studios. So as an Angel Guild member, your pain is part of that creation, and so thank you. That's what's going to scale throughout the world.
So what we wanted to do this morning was just lift higher artists who are genuinely cultivating the culture. And what we loved about hearing from Marco is that culture care. What I love about Sabin is the storytelling that he is doing with his art and lifting our eyes higher. And what I love about what these guys are doing is just on huge scale. It's gone. But the good, the true, the noble, the beautiful, all that is full of integrity, thank you guys so much for everything you're doing. Should we just thank Oski?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.